Hey, how are you? Slice of Otaku, and one of the most exciting things about My Hero Academia has to be the development of our young characters. Being a series that encapsulates the magical intrigue of heroic origins across multiple characters, it's hard not to imagine what they'll be like at later points in the story. But at the same token, it's pretty easy to get caught up in the glitz and glamour of characters with overtly impressive quirks, like say Deku, Bakugo, or Todoroki. Meanwhile, there are so many other characters with pretty overlooked potential, and so with this video and plenty more, we're gonna try and change that. Firstly, by talking about Tsuyu, whose quirk is way more impressive than you may initially think. Alright, so her quirk Frog falls under the quirk classification of mutant, as it naturally construes her appearance and mannerisms to have certain qualities typical of frogs. Her hair perpetually looks moist, her hands, mouth, and feet are atypically large, her tongue is extremely elongated, instead of running she opts to hopping around on all fours, and says ribbit a lot. Despite all this, her appearance isn't nearly as frog-like as her parents, and at an earlier stage of her adolescence, she even had a tail akin to that of a tadpole, implying that a level of metamorphosis is present within this quirk. But with that out of the way, let's get into the abilities included with this quirk. The simple explanation being that with it, Tsu can pretty much do anything a frog can do. And that's actually a lot. Tsu has a lot of abilities right now. She can stick to walls. With her legs being incredibly strong, she can leap long distances and swim even faster. Her tongue is really cool because she can extend it at will with incredible precision, and it's surprisingly really strong. Being able to tie people up with it, she's been able to suspend characters like Deku in the air with no visible strain, insinuating that her tongue is able to lift more than she would be able to off of upper body strength alone. It may also be used as a grappling tool. She has an inflatable stomach and the ability to regurgitate whole items previously swallowed. She's able to produce mucus secreted from her arms as a means of masking her own scent. She can secrete a sticky, toxic liquid from the inner lining of her stomach. That's something she's only just recently found an application for, despite expressing to Deku and Mineta that it's something she's able to do during the USJ incident. And she can somewhat camouflage herself with her surrounding environment. That last one being her super move, which made even the creator of the series, Horikoshi, make a note that she may be growing to be too powerful. Which makes sense because invisibility in conjunction with the ability to throw off the senses of tracking quirks by means of bodily secretion is impressive as is. So yeah, as you can probably already tell, Tsu is pretty well endowed as far as abilities goes as is. But what really rips the brakes off her potential is the fact that her frog abilities are not limited by species. Now, you may or may not know this, but there are a lot, and I mean a lot of different types of frogs. The approximation of which being around 4,740. And although they're obviously all frogs, many of these variations have some pretty distinctly unique abilities of their own. And so I've accumulated a few notable ones that I could totally see her possessing at some point. First up is the red-eyed tree frog, which overstimulates a predator's eyes by suddenly flashing its colors, resulting in the creation of a rather confusing afterimage. Tsu has always been known to be a rather intelligent and calculated thinker, so I'd imagine she'd be able to incorporate this ability well into future combative encounters. And this is something that could certainly be made into a modification or improvement of her current hero costume, which changes colors with her body in support of her camouflage ability. Next, we have the Holy Cross Frog, which produces the strongest non-toxic glue in the world, being able to set in about 30 seconds whether in open air or underwater. This is something I think could fit pretty well into her toolkit of dischargeable substances, being able to trap adversaries or quickly patch things up on the verge of collapse. And at that, its applicability even in underwater scenarios would be really nice, as she doesn't really have as many underwater perks as I'd otherwise expect her to. In the case of first aid, we look to the monkey tree frog, which is able to produce a substance said to be 40 times more potent than the ever reputable pain reliever, morphine. As a first responder, it is a hero's job to stabilize the situation and prevent as much chaos and turmoil as possible, so if a civilian is injured, this could be a pretty viable option. Then after that, we have Bornean flat-headed frogs who don't have lungs and instead breathe through their skin, which Tsu doesn't necessarily need as her lung capacity is likely superior to your average person's, but if we're just doing minor upgrades to pre-existing traits, this could be pretty cool. But if we're talking general frog abilities that could be a nice fit, there's always natural disaster prediction and night vision. Because as it turns out, many frogs are able to predict earthquakes several days before devastation, as they can sense chemical shifts in groundwater prior to such instances. An ability that would be majorly beneficial to just about any rescue hero. A subclassification that Tsu herself could aim towards or be a sidekick to. And with a bit of anime flair, could be really sick. And if we're talking night vision, believe it or not, frogs are believed to possess night vision superior to that of all other animals, as they're able to see color even when it's too dark for humans to see anything at all. Which is pretty insane and certainly has a myriad of uses. Once again, all of these proposed abilities hold some sort of benefit to rescue work that may be fully realized thanks to Tsu's cooperative nature. That ability to synergize with a multitude of different heroes in various different situations is amazing. In fact, she's already managed to do so with Uraraka, creating a combined super move during their shared internship under the current number 10 hero, the dragon hero Ryuko. And that's only after a few days, guys. Evidently, as a means of balancing the character, Tsu has a pretty big weakness, as being exposed to particularly low temperatures causes her to enter a sort of hibernation-like stasis. This sensitivity stemming from the cold-blooded trait of frogs. Now, this isn't something I think she will ever completely overcome, nor would I really want her to, as it's a physiological aspect of her character and quirk, but in this technologically advanced society of mind-blowing support items, I'm sure something could be made to offset this issue. And seeing as the inverse could certainly be said about absurdly hot environments as well, I'd imagine some form of temperature regulation system would suit her best, but there's plenty of options here. She did specify herself to be a rainy season hero anyways, so she seems to be well aware of her own limitations. But I don't see why she wouldn't continue her hero work if presented with a reasonable alternative. Hopefully you now understand just how far Tsuyu and her frog quirk can go in the hero world. Frogs can do some pretty crazy things. I mean, the abilities of a torrent frog are so incredible that if Tsu had them, Jiro's earphone jack quirk would be pretty irrelevant. But ultimately, I decided to restrict myself to plausibility based on what may be easily justified or explained to be a frog-like trait, while also aligning well with what seems to be Horikoshi's current intentions for the character. Not to mention trying to avoid making her seem too overpowered. But as we go further and further along in this story, it would seem as though multiple quirks are going to increase in prevalence, so at the very least, her wide range of options will hopefully keep her in contention with threats yet to show themselves. Like I said at the beginning of the video, the concept of quirk evolution is something we're looking to continue covering in the future, since there's just so many quirks in the series with plenty of room for growth. If that's something you'd like to see more of and you enjoyed this one, I hope you'll support us by sharing the video with anyone you know who loves My Hero Academia. And at that, please let us know which characters you would like us to talk about next as far as quirk development goes. And beyond just that, we have a lot to say about this hero world in general, so make sure to keep up with everything we have going on over here, because there is plenty more to come. Thank you all so much for watching and have an awesome day. I love you.